Service members of Reddit. What is your worst military wife story? I got stationed back in the States from Germany. I flew my German girlfriend over and we ended up getting married. She went back to Germany 4 days later and I never saw her again. Lol. Whack. While delivering our 4th baby at a military hospital, we were talking to one of the nurses about infidelity and crazy things she had witnessed. She told us about a woman coming in with her husband for a C-section that was not scheduled. The woman insisted that she was scheduled for a C-section that day. They did an ultrasound and found that she was 3 months pregnant, not 9 months pregnant. She was willing to deliver a baby 6 months early so it would appear the conception lined up with her husband's mid-tour leave. Posting on behalf of my husband. Worst, they came back from a 15-month tour in Iraq. His platoon sergeant went home to find another man living in his house with his wife and kids. His kids, toddlers, were calling the guy daddy. When he walked in, his wife basically said, "Yay, I want a divorce. I'm with him now." Worst part was the platoon sergeant and new daddy kinda worked together, but was one of the few who stay behind for clerical stuff while the rest deployed. Yes, I know this is absolutely against the rules. This was when it was the Wild West and a DUI was an unofficial requirement for E6. ETA. I asked my husband what happened after this. He doesn't know what happened to Jody, a deployment replacement daddy. The husband threatened to take the kids and kick her onto the street, which he definitely had grounds to do. Instead, she agreed to on-demand 6 and threesomes, including summoning a prostitute if he wanted one and helping him keep it on the DL. Standing gate guard in Washington, D.C. Officer's wife drives through the gate and presents her ID. I wave her through. She doesn't move, asking me if I forgot something. I said no, I didn't believe I did. She said I forgot to salute her, pointing to the blue sticker on her windshield. I leaned close to her windshield and saluted the sticker, wishing it a good afternoon. I got removed from that duty. I was stationed at FT Knox in the late 80s. A soldier's child turned up missing. Damn near every soldier on FT Knox was looking for this kid. We looked for days. Kid never turns up. I leave and move on. Several years later, I'm sent back to FT Knox, out of the blue. A bunch of activity is happening at a park several miles away. The little girl turned up, some of her anyway, and it turns out that the soldier's wife, the girl's stepmom, killed the girl. The soldier came home, found out and hid the body in the park. The whole case was solved because the older sister of the girl was starting to get worried she was next. Told a teacher who got the police involved. At the worst I've heard of. Over 20 plus years in the army. Plenty of cheating. Plenty of other stuff. Oh, I'm gonna post some of my friend's highlights. She was the midwife on an Air Force base. Delivered lots of babies. Colonel brought his 16-year-old daughter in because she was pregnant. Turns out the father was a new junior enlisted. He did not last long in the military. Dude's wife left him and moved in with her boyfriend off base while he was deployed. She got knocked up. Since they were still married, she was still going to the base for medical care. Their divorce wasn't final by her due date, so she still got to go on base and deliver. Her soon-to-be ex-husband, the military guy, had his buddies and security forces put a security flag on his soon-to-be ex-wife's boyfriend. The boyfriend couldn't be on base for the birth of his child, and always the favorite. Babies coming out with the wrong ethnic background of the father was at least a once-a-year thing. A guy in my shop, Air Force, deployed to Iraq for 4.5 months. Before he left, he signed over general power of attorney to his wife. While he was gone, she started ducking another guy in our shop, then signed the divorce paperwork as his power of attorney and his rights to see his kids, as well as draining his bank account. She went to live with the other guy in my shop and his friend off base. They were both arrested for check fraud when trying to pass off a check that was the roommates and the shopette on base. The guy she divorced eventually got full custody of the kids and the other guy in my shop got kicked out of the AF. There were other stories of cheating and all of that kind of it, but this one takes the cake. She actively worked to ruin his life when all he did was love his kids and get deployed to Iraq. Don't give anyone general power of attorney, ever. I don't care how much you trust them or how much you think they love you. Don't do it. You can give them specialized power of attorney that only allows them to handle your affairs that you very specifically need them to handle. Saw a newer airman with no belt on. I asked, why don't you have a belt? He said he can't afford one, so I give him $5 and tell him to go get a belt. A few weeks later I see him at Ruby Tuesday cleaning tables. I ask around and apparently his wife was growing weed in base housing and he got kicked out of the military. He swore he didn't know what she was doing. Oh man, so many. One friend in the Corps, a first term sergeant who hated every minute he was in uniform. He re-enlisted so she could go to school. Left for deployment after re-enlistment. Came back to a divorce and a drained bank account. Had another sergeant who met his wife while he and like 7 other guys were running a gangbang on her. He decided he needed to marry her. So many stories there. But I mean, he probably deserved them. Cause I mean, wow. I got accosted by a depender at a Home Depot parking lot because I parked in her space. I parked in a veteran spot at Home Depot. I am a veteran. I had my 2 toddlers with me, and the spot was next to a cart stall. As I am pulling my kids out of the car, this lady walks up to me and starts asking me questions. Simple stuff, but nothing out of the ordinary. But I leave my kids in the car to be safe. She then starts asking about my veteran status, which was weird, but not bad. I told her I'm a SGT in the 123 Trans Brigade, not real, part of the Natty Guard. Well, my husband's a Lieutenant Col, which means he's a higher rank. She said, well, if he's a commissioned officer, he's already a high rank. I said, so you should give me your spot. I was dumbfounded. WTF. I told her to pound sand, to which she wanted my info, rank, name, etc. So I said, yeah, sure, and I'll make sure to give you the spot next time. No, 3 days later, I get a call from mine colleague. Hey, SGT stuck in post. Do you know a LTCS face? To which, no, I don't. Okay, I got a LTC in my office looking for you. Said it's important. Alright. Mine colleague puts me on speakerphone. Hey Sant, this is LTCS face. I wanted to apologize for my spouse's behavior the other day. I jokingly told her she could parade up and down the street ordering other soldiers to do things. And I had no idea she would take it literally. I'm sorry this happened and I hope we can put this behind us. I accepted his apology, because up to this point, no CO has ever apologized for their actions. Chillest LTC ever. The issue is that people forget the military is filled with 18-20-year-old boys, many of whom lacked relationship experience, and marry the first girl who gives them attention. Dude in my platoon's wife falsely accused her ex-MP boyfriend of rape, went as far as stabbing a mattress and swallowing condom to set him up. Dude spends weeks in jail before being cleared of all charges. When it comes to light, it was crazy lady vindictive bullet. She amped up the crazy. She handed her friend her and my platoon mate's baby through a window at night while they watched a movie. Platoon mate went to check on the baby and it was missing. Prompted the first Amber Alert in Alaska history. She tried to pin it on the MP as some sort of act of vengeance. I can only imagine what the poor dude was thinking when the cops came to him with this. He was very quickly eliminated as subject and they figured out that the baby was safe rather quickly. Got back from an 8-month deployment. Buddy's wife was 6 months pregnant. My brother-in-law was on both sides of it cheating stories. He married a woman he chatted to online for a few weeks when he was 19. Then he had to go to Iraq. A month after he left, she told him that he got her pregnant. He comes home after 6 months, then she has the baby. The baby definitely is not his. Fast forward 10 years. He's married to an awesome chick we all like. She works a job and takes care of everything around the house. He cheats on her with her 18-year-old girl that worked at Sonic. She catches him and leaves for a weekend to go stay with her sister to figure out what to do. He puts all her stuff in cardboard boxes out under the carport and moves in the new girl. Not a service member, but my uncle is in co. His first wife cheated on him with a colonel's wife. He found them in a very sexual situation in his own house. So he did what he had to, and he yeeted them naked out of the house for all the other people living in the military houses to see, including the colonel. Got a divorce. Full custody of kids. So, I was Air National Guard for 9 years. There was a girl who enlisted about the same time I did. In those 9 years before I got out, she had been married and divorced 3 times. She wasn't even 30. I believe her marriages went Marine, Navy, Army. Her rationale each time was that it was the guy's fault. If someone keeps picking a rotten apple and taking a bite, you don't blame the apple. I was pretty naive and got maneuvered into a couple of its situations. First, somehow ended up alone with colleague's wife. She starts telling sexy stories and getting closer and closer to me. Tells me something like, "Nobody gives better blowjobs than me." It made sense in conversation, but also wasn't really necessary. My somewhat intoxicated response, "Okay, then. Good night. I'll be leaving now." Second, was drinking with a different colleague. He got very intoxicated and, out of the blue, starting berating me for trying to sleep with his wife. I did not want to sleep with his wife and was not trying to. Noped out of there. 2. Later that night, wife showed up at my apartment, ostensibly to apologize. Heard some other rumors, but was never sure what to believe. A friend of mine came home one day early from a year-long deployment. Wife was busy ducking another guy on the couch. In the bedroom was a baby she had never mentioned, fathered by yet a third guy. I was in the officer club in Okinawa around 2012 or so. In walk at least 6 women in slutty, cute off-shorts versions of flight suits that were bright orange. I was pretty confused until my Marine friend told me that meant their husbands were deployed and they were looking for a good time. Apparently it was an open secret. While I was in the Air Force, way back in 2003 or so, a guy's wife started hanging out in the dorms without her husband. Me and my buddy avoided her because we figured it wasn't going to turn out okay. Yeah. Turns out she was just running through every guy in the dorms and even had sex with a guy in our shop. I mean that literally. He brought her into the shop and they had sex on one of our workbenches. Again. Back in the early 2000s. Guy I know had his wife attack him with an iron skillet. Both of them were active duty. He ended up choking her out because she was trying to kill him. Cops get called because its base housing and walls are paper thin. Wife admits she attacked him and he was just defending himself. First sergeant presses charges on the husband. Husband gets found guilty and kicked out of the AF and becomes a house husband for his wife who is still in the military. Wife never got charged with anything. Our neighbors. 2. Brought us some stories. 1. Unit deployed and she met a new guy. Used power of attorney to divorce the husband overseas and married the new guy so quick she was able to stay on base in the same house. First husband came home and ended up being in the same platoon as second husband who now lived in his house with his kids and all his belongings. 2. When we first moved in on base we had a neighbor that was super friendly. Wife told us she had cancer so her brother was staying with her to take care of her. We think nothing of it. A few months later they moved out to live off base. Normal thing so no reason to be skeptical. Fast forward a few months and I'm shoveling the driveway and a guy from next door comes over to say hi. I say hi and welcome him as a new neighbor. He's not a new neighbor. He's had that house for a couple years. I got confused and asked about the woman who had moved out recently. He told me that woman was his wife. The brother was her lover. She didn't have cancer. And she spent all his money on Farmville then moved out with everything they owned. Dude was tag teaming a girl with a friend and she got pregnant. The guy I knew took full responsibility and married the girl, who was also a stripper during the week. Kid wasn't his but he stayed and had 2 more kids with her. He was a smart guy and we all told him to bail when the kid wasn't his but he stayed. She also had an 8th grade education and was the dumbest person I had ever met. This isn't my story and it happened at a fire station so if this doesn't meet the criteria I apologize. There's a firefighter who used to pay another firefighter for work for him, so that FFA could go home for the day and have a sex with FFB's wife. Afterwards she would give him the money that he would then use to pay FFB to work for him again. I was deployed to Iraq and had a fiancée at the time. She called off the engagement because she said I was too controlling. It turns out that not wanting her to go to bars and dance topless is considered controlling. I later found out she was already sleeping with another soldier from another unit. Probably wouldn't have been a happy marriage anyways. Long story short, someone A. In my unit walked in on his wife cheating on him with someone else. B. From our unit. They separate. She moves in with B and leaves the unit. 8 months later, we return from a deployment. And A goes on one date with a girl. His ex-wife finds out and calls the 1STSGT. A gets charged with adultery and reduced in rank while B only got switched to a different unit. A guy allegedly murdered his wife but was acquitted. Her body was found in the bathroom and near around the toilet area. Sergeant was at a party with a couple lower enlisted they had been friends with for years. SGT got hammered. And poor PVT's wife took advantage of that. And the other 3 guys in the room. They're still married. But there was a huge investigation behind it. Heard one not long ago about a lieutenant's wife who copped an attitude when informed that her husband did not qualify her for general officer only parking. Sucks because I know quite a few military wives who have horror stories about getting cheated on. Goes both ways I guess. Thanks for the great responses everyone. If you're in your early 20s, in the military, and already married, I assume your marriage is an absolute joke and your partner is at most a 5/10. I promise. The benefits are not that good. Signed up in the Navy to go to Japan. Got assigned to my first ship in Japan. Captain hated his wife. Saw many other lovely countries that weren't Japan. Epilogue. Captain finally rotated out. Get orders to go to Iraq for 16 months. I worked in postal. In Italy. There's so many military wives that come and screaming that their husband is a captain general whatever, so you totally need to let her male whine to her friends in the States. Sure, lady, I'll totally break federal law because you are married to one of 24 captains sitting in this base. They screamed louder when I explained that it was illegal. This happened at least twice a week. Couldn't get out of Italy fast enough. While I was in the Navy, my husband was a civilian. We married young like all service members do at 19. We grew up in the same city and dated for several years. I thought I knew the guy inside and out. He had some anger issues but nothing out of the ordinary for a 19-year-old dude. I deployed to Afghanistan almost immediately and that's when things changed. Some other base wife told him that I was ducking dudes in porta potties. Which I was not. He started doing heroin at some point. Started selling drugs to base wives. Absolutely trashed my house. He sold everything and drained my account. Thousands of dollars in deployment money gone. He left base never to return. My 2 dogs were left in the house. Did more and more damage. And were taken to the Humane Society where I paid hundreds to get them back. He hung out with a Japanese girl off base until my return. They got pregnant. Then he started to follow me and threaten me. Anyways, we got divorced and his psycho mother continued to threaten me for several years. Overall very fun experience. Would rate 4/10. Air Force and Navy veteran here and I'm a Marine wife. The worst thing I ever experienced was the death of a beautiful 5-month-old baby girl. The SGT and his wife were serious gamers. The wife also suffered from mental health issues. Both were weird and ignorant. The wife was tired of the baby crying and not sleeping. So, she propped a bottle on a pillow, used more pillows to cushion her, and left her in the master bedroom while she and the hubby gamed. The little girl suffocated. Either parent checked on her for 12+ hours. They said they thought she was sleeping. They found her dead, left her for several more hours, and made a failed attempt to resuscitate her while they were on the phone with 911. They're so stupid. The police and DEMS shared with me that rigor mortis had already set in and it looked as the baby had been dead for more than 24 hours. The parents went back to gaming because they wanted to finish their match or whatever. The mother showed zero remorse. However, she was completely fascinated with how popular she was becoming on social media. So much so, that she was super giddy with her local fame and said her kid dying was worth the fame and GoFundMe. The Marine was indifferent to the whole thing. This was one of my husband's Marines. He got the call to go to the family and bring them whatever they needed for temporary lodging. We had no idea what a rich show we'd be walking into. Ooh boy, buckle up. This happened over the course of 3-month deployments over a 2-year period. First deployment. I came back to my wife and a big stack of mail. In them were 2 notices of repossession for non-payment of my car. 3 final notices for all of our utilities. A letter from the landlord. I started off with the car. Since I didn't want it to be repossessed, I went to our joint bank account and found it empty. No bills had been paid in 3 months. When I asked her about what happened to all of our money, she said, "I went to Waffle House a lot. Second deployment. I came back to a house with 4 dogs and 3 cats. There was the outside garbage can sitting in the middle of the living room. Oh, and a homeless guy was sleeping on my couch. She, apparently, had taken to volunteering at the local animal shelter and had to save all these animals from being euthanized. The backyard had no grass left from the dogs digging. The carpets were torn up from the feral cats, and there were a pile of dog shit, petrified, all over the house. When asked about the garbage can, she said that it was just too hard to take the trash out. When asked about the homeless guy, she said that she had met him at Waffle House and he just needed some help. The third deployment. I came back to my wife having 2 new make friends. After paling around with them for a couple months, a different girl friend told me that my wife had been cheating on me with these 2 guys. When I asked about the cheating, she said she only sucked his D because it was Christmas and she hadn't gotten him a gift. Ugh. When I was stationed in Germany, my best friend was having an affair with his boss's wife. They wound up coming back to the US and getting married. And my boss's wife, who was friends with her, started coming onto me. I eventually had to do a "it's not you, it's me" thing to discourage her. My SGT's wife still needed to become a legal citizen. When we deployed, she got arrested for selling alcohol to an underage undercover cop. Yay, manufactured crimes. So while we're deployed, my SGT and most of my command is spending extra time and effort trying to fight the legal system in the US and keep them from deporting her back to Mexico due to her now being a criminal and also overstaying her work visa. So my command and the SGT fight and eventually win. Wife gets to stay in the country and gets to become a citizen. Fast forward 2 months and it turns out his wife's brother is not actually her brother but her boyfriend, and my SGT's daughter has been calling her father uncle for a few years. The wife's family apparently knew that the daughter belonged to the boyfriend, who was also in the country illegally, and just never said anything so that the daughter would be claimed by my SGT and be considered a US citizen, and it would help the wife get citizenship. Now this woman, her boyfriend, and her entire family were in on a plan to help the wife get citizenship through an active duty Marine. I'm not saying I think they planned the conception or anything, but an opportunity arose and they took it. In my book they are all human scum, and I hope the daughter never learns about any of this. My SGT eventually, and still is, in deep denial about the daughter now being his and believes his wife simply cheated on him. He forgave her and they are still married 8 years later. One evening while I was on staff duty, my then wife decided that I was cheating on her and not. In fact, at work, I was totally at work, nor had I ever cheated on her. So she texts me and says I'm going to go to the barracks and duck the first soldier I see. I was so checked out of the relationship at this point I was just waiting to get out to leave her, so I didn't bother responding. She showed up at the barracks and got turned away by CQ because she used her dependent ID to try to check into the barracks and couldn't tell them who she was there to visit.